So, for my reading this week, my two topics were perception and setting the groundwork. So, I wanted to touch base briefly on Angel because I feel that his perceptiveness and willingness to be open and willing to adjust his perception of how he views nameless these fish. It's a continuation, I feel, from like last week's chapter, but this talk about mullet specifically just kind of caught my attention, where he's like, mullet is perceived as a trash fish. I have these delicious recipes that use it, but I've got bass that will sell out, because it's bass. And I thought that was really interesting because he's got a delicious product and chefs don't want to cook with it. People don't want to eat it because it's mullet and because their perception of it is no. So I think that's kind of a big deal. It's something that Dan mentioned earlier as well. How much change that a chef can have in the food industry when it comes to how we look at food. So for my second topic, I chose setting the groundwork. And this one just kind of like Claus and Mary just kind of, Mary Howell really just stuck out to me with this. So they talked about getting their soil right. So once you get their soil right, you can grow more efficiently. Okay, set the groundwork. But what they did, the ripples that this had was so far reaching. So they grew organic grain, and come to find out there were a lot of farmers that had wanted to do that, but for reasons they were having problems. And I think something Klaus said is, if you build it, they will come. And he was right, because his business shot up quite a bit, by like 20% monthly for a couple of years. And I think that says it right there. And because of that, though, they were able to bring in full-time workers, and the town was able to support more businesses. He essentially revitalized his business because he got his soil right, and he was able to grow more, and he's able to grow more efficiently. And because he had a soil right, he had an easier time growing organically, which allowed him to then pursue purchasing this building to sell organic grain. And then because sold organic grain, and this is where I'm going to quote right here. The mill encouraged more farmers to convert to organic. The seed business that they had already had allows them to grow organically, and with the kind of crop diversity that will help soil fertility, the soil sustains itself and continues to grow. They set the groundwork for this, and they continued to set the groundwork. And I just think that's amazing. And so for the supporting article that I chose for this is, trees can make farms more sustainable. Here's how to help farmers plant more. So the quote for this, and what really, it caught my attention for like that first paragraph. I was like, oh, this is it. So it's, imagine making one change to a farm field so that as well as producing food, it also generated building materials, fuel, and fodder. At the same time, this change would nourish the health of the soil, regulate the microclimate, and support pest controlling wildlife. In fact, it could even produce a whole nother crop, end quote. And I love this because this is so true. So you could plant, like let's say you got a marshy area, and instead of like running drains through it, you plant for your marshy area. Marsh areas are super dynamic when it comes to growing food and the animals that live there. You could raise ducks. There's just all kinds of things you could do. And ducks are a big one for that. So, but you can plant these trees, and if you're in the right grow zone, you can plant and coppice these trees. That means you plant these trees one time, but you can harvest them for lumber multiple times over their lifespan. How much money do you save doing that? especially if you stagger and diversify the trees that you coppice. And there are several breeds of trees that you can do that with. So you just have to do the research and set the groundwork. So, but you plant one thing for the purpose of serving multiple things. This is systematic. And we come back to, in order to have a systematic approach, which is sustainable long term, we have to adjust our perception. Trees are more than just the things that provide you shade. They can be the things that, sure, provide you shade, but prevent erosion, provide habitats for animals, provide lumber, diversify your revenue. I know farmers that use trees to grow. They grow mushrooms. They plant walnut trees in dense rows, and then they grow truffles. And then, down the line, when the walnuts are older, 50 years, so it's multi-generational, there's income for their family. They've created a legacy. So perception and groundwork were my two topics for this, and I was super excited about them. So thank you for listening.